Welcome back to my channel, returning audience at least. If you are new, come on in, everyone is welcome here. And in this video, I'm going to go through January's reading wrap up. I had such a good month in January, I read loads of books. I think I actually read 11 in total. I did DNF a few. I'm going to talk to you about my thoughts and feelings of the books that I read, why I scored them the way that I did. I'll be honest, you're not going to get perfect aesthetics on this page, you're not going to get amazing editing skills, but you are going to get a man in front of a camera that just loves books and loves talking to people and spreading positivity about books and mental health. So you might notice here, I started off the month with a lot of fantasy books, and then as the month got on, I got like fantasy fatigue, and I was just like, oh, give me something else. So I started reading other stuff. My first two reads of January were Empire of the Vampire and Empire of the Damned by J. Christoph. I'd never read J. Christoph's work before. I do have the Nevernight series up there somewhere. I've opened it once, I saw there were like footnotes in it, I read them and I was like, I'm not feeling that right now, so I put it back. I went in kind of blind because I'd never read vampire lore in books before. I've tried reading Twilight before, but they're cringy as hell, so I closed them and put them down. So I didn't know what to expect with this series. I didn't expect it to be as heavily involved, like with the church. There's a lot going on with churches and priests, and I understand that because since reading this, I've learned that vampire lore involves the church a lot, which makes sense because when I was younger and I used to watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer, there's churches everywhere, isn't there? Giles is going around with his cross and he's going like, oh, be gone, and vampires are like, so I get it. But I just didn't enjoy that at all. Other people have messaged me and said that it's Interview with a Vampire mixed with another book, I can't remember which one, but it's the interview setting for me that didn't work. Now I know that loads of people have read this book and said that they loved it. So if you've not read this, this probably would be a 5-star read for a lot of people. It's set in a world where everything's just gone dark. The sun shines no more. So obviously because there's no sun, it means vampires can come out and just be like, oh, roaming streets, what are you going to do now? There's no sun. But then you've got these half-breed vampires who are half human, half vampire, and they're going around trying to basically send all of the vampires to Jesus. They've caught the strongest Silver Saint, who is the guy that hunts all the vampires, and they're interrogating him, trying to find out how he became the strongest of all, and how he ended up unaliving one of the most powerful vampires that there is. So in this interrogation, he's telling the story of how his life unfolded. So you are getting world building, but it's done through interview, and for me it just didn't work as well as I think it will for other people. Now, for anyone that's never read this and has got it on the TBR, I'd still say read it, because I think it's important to remember that reviews and books are so subjective. Some of the logic behind why I might not enjoy a book and why I might score a book a certain way will make no sense to anyone at all. But that's fine because it's me that's reviewing it. It's my review. No one can tell me my own review is wrong because it's what I feel in my head. But I try and also give you the positives so that my reviews don't put you off. Because there's so many positives from this book. It's written fantastically. I remember writing some lines and annotating lines, which I never do in this book, that just slapped. His character work is class. Gabriel de Leon is a great character. There's another character called Dior that comes in later on in the story that's absolutely insane. The relationships are great. It just didn't blow me away. I rated it 4-star, which for me is still a great score. But I just don't think I'm particularly bothered about vampire lore. And that's okay, not every book is going to be for everyone. So going from that into Empire of the Damned, I still wanted to. I don't know, at the end of Empire of the Vampire, it left me wanting more. So I did go straight into Empire of the Damned. And it kind of picked up where it left off, but I just found that 25% in, I was getting a lot of the same. Writing were beautiful, still a lot of kind of church and stuff like that, and I was just like, I'm not enjoying this. And the book's, it's a big book, you know, it's like 700 odd pages, 600 odd pages, but in a hardback, that's a lot of words. So I DNF'd it at 25% because I just thought, you know, this is an uncompleted series. There's another book due out in this series, and I just weren't that bothered about finishing it. I am quite easy to DNF a book. Life's too short, there's millions of books out there, and I'm not going to spend time reading a book that I just think's okay, when I could read books that I absolutely love. And if you look on Goodreads, these books get insane scores. What I don't want people to do is come onto this page, see my review of a book and be like, that's exactly how I felt about that book. So that means anything else Tyrone says is probably going to be accurate. I just won't read them. Because, yeah, don't. Because there's a good chance you'll probably read this and you'll love it. Coming up next, we've got Dungeon Crawler Call Book 3, which is called The Dungeons Anarchist Cookbook by Matt Dinnerman. This follows on where it left off. So book 2 was absolutely class. I can't remember what I scored it, but it was very good. Book 1 I rated 5-star. Thanks, babe. And I just enjoyed this. For anyone that's not watched my videos before, you'll know I rave about this series so much. It is lit RPG. So if you've never read it before, I'd say it's almost like a subcategory of fantasy. It's a video game in a book. It's wild. This story follows a man called Carl and his adopted pet cat, we'll say, called Princess Donut, who's the sassiest cat ever. within the first few chapters of book 1, she starts to talk. So the relationship between them two is class. They're just going through dungeons, and on each dungeon, it's a different, like a game mechanic that they've got to try and figure out and overcome, and then get past the dungeon. And then if they get to the end of the dungeons, they get sent back to Earth because aliens have taken over Earth, and they're basically using this as a video game for their own entertainment. It's just absolutely wild. There's ogres, there's minging stuff, there's trolls. Honestly, it's hilarious. But there's also, like, a good plot to it as well. It's not just fun. As the series gets further on, there's character development. In this book, there's a character that comes into it called Katja, and she's just like an anxious blob. It's great. The only reason I scored this down is because the mechanic behind this dungeon was all about trains and stuff, and it was just quite overwhelming. It's intentionally done that way because this book is meant to be overwhelming for Carl. He's got to try and figure out how all these train lines work and stuff like that. But while he's trying to figure it out, I'm trying to figure it out. And I just didn't figure it. So I rated this 4-star. This book slaps. This series slaps. I think everyone should try and read it. And it's also on Kindle Unlimited. So if you just want to pick up book 1, if you've got Kindle Unlimited, it's on there. You can read it. I guarantee by chapter 3, you'll be obsessed. And if you're not, it's not going to be for you because it's just wild. You probably noticed that Ellie's made me a brew while I've been doing this video. And I'm going to dunk it now. Hopefully it works and doesn't drop in my tea. Oh, very good. If you're dipping into your tea, no more than 3 seconds. Only a fool breaks the 3-second rule. Next up in jam, we've got an interesting one. Can you guess what that is? Can you guess? Can you guess now? You guessed yet? No? Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. This was so interesting because first 40% of this book, I was obsessed with it. And I mean properly obsessed. I'd never read Greek mythology before. Other than watching Hercules as a kid, I didn't really know much about Greek mythology. So I didn't actually know the story of Achilles when I went into this book. I thought it was just going to be like a cute gay romance, which is basically what the first 40% is. It's just Achilles and Patroclus, whatever his name is, getting to know each other, exploring the sexuality, exploring just life. And it's just beautiful. It's a beautiful story of friendship, of exploration, of challenging boundaries with like parents, with society. And then a war comes, and I just weren't ready for it. I didn't even know there was going to be a war in this book. I've heard about the film Troy. I didn't know that was linked to Achilles. And yeah, it just ruined it for me a little bit. It's probably my fault. I say it's probably my fault. It is my fault because if I'd done a bit of research, I'd have known really what was going to happen, and I'd have expected the unexpected. But I just came away from this book just wanting more. I wanted an happy ending. I didn't get what I wanted. I rated it 3.5 star. That's so strict because the book is beautiful, but it's also heartbreaking. And I just went in the right place to want a heartbreak. This, if you're wondering, is from Folio Society. They actually sent me this, and I've not put any content out on my pages yet. But yeah, it's right fit, and it's got pictures of like Patroclus and Achilles and stuff in it, and it feels right nice. Some ASMR, I reckon. So my plan is to try and learn more about Greek mythology anyway. I'm going to start reading Percy Jackson with my son to teach me more about Greek mythology. And then I'm going to come back and read that because I think once I know more and I know what to expect, I'll probably score it 5 star. I just got overwhelmed. There were loads, about halfway through, there's loads of different names and towns and kings and stuff are all coming in, and they're just like, I just felt like I was getting smacked in the face with names and gods and stuff, and I just didn't know I didn't know whether I was coming or going. So yeah, that book's class. I just went in right place to read it. Again, this doesn't always have to make sense. This book slaps. Blood over Brighthaven by M.L. Wang. If you have read, go on, what's it called? What's she write? Sword of Kaigan. This is the same author. This book's insane. Equally as insane, if not even better in my humble opinion. And it's so unique. I think this woman just writes unique, heartbreaking books. I will give you a pre-warning. I did on my other socials. If you're going to read this book, be in a good mental space because it's not going to be like a nice fluffy book. You're potentially not going to get you happily ever after. And yeah, it's just devastating. Even the magic system in this book is devastating. You read the first 20% of this book and you're kind of like, oh, that's such a cool magic system. And then you realise what the magic system is and you're like, whoa. It just takes you back. It is disgusting. It's so unique. And it's such a bold, brave move as well by the author. Because some people, I think, could read that magic system and be like, that's just too much. You've gone too far, sister. But it just worked for me. The characters in the book were insane. They're imperfect. You know, you're rooting for them all the way along, but they don't necessarily always make the right decisions. They can sometimes make quite selfish decisions, but you like, understand why they've made the decisions and you don't judge her for it. Siona is the main character in here. She's a female protagonist. She's just powerful. she's strong, she's independent, and she grows so much through the story. This is probably the one that I'd say, after Dungeon Crawler Call, you should all read, but just be careful with it. Then after I'd finished Blood Over Brighthaven, I think I would just fantasied out. That book took a lot out of me, so I was like, I need something easier to read now, something just to chill, something where maybe I've not got to focus as much. So I picked up Christine Hanna's Night Road. I've read Nightingale before by this author, and that book were insane. I do like historical fiction. Normally, if it's around World War II kind of time, it's a win. But this isn't that. This is a story about a young girl who is in and out of foster care. She eventually finds a long-lost auntie who takes her in. She's like, come here, duck, I'll look after you, I'll give you all the love that you've ever needed. And it starts off really nice. She then meets some friends. Friends are really well off. They're from an affluent family. And the mum is just vile. She's not vile. She's not intentionally vile. I don't want it to come across like she's vile. She's overbearing. She wraps the kids in cotton wool. She don't give them any freedom at all to be creative or to go out there and make mistakes and make friends. And it's just the mum's decisions in this book that causes a lot of the chaos and heartbreak that comes from it. I got 60% into this book and I shut it because I couldn't deal with Jude anymore. Jude is the mum. I think that's what her name were anyway. I think most of you, if you enjoy Christine Hanna's books, will probably enjoy this. But as I keep saying in my videos, I'm very character driven. And if I hate a character in a book, I just can't read it. I like to like characters in books. I like happy ever afters. I like liking things. And I just didn't like Jude. She just made me angry. Every page I turned, I was just like, I don't want to hear from you again. Go. Just go away, leave me alone. And she wouldn't leave me alone, so I left her alone. And I DNF'd it. But I think you should still read it, because Christine Hanna's class. Do you have sugar in your tea? I do. I have 2 sugars. My father-in-law goes mad, he hates it. You don't have sugar in tea? I do. Then, after I'd finished reading that, I needed some crime. Because that's where I tend to go to. If I don't know what else to read, I read crime books. Chris Carter, M.W. Craven, James Patterson, anything like that. 'Cause you don't really have to think about it. You just pick it up and you go on an adventure and you try and catch criminals. And you're like, he did it, he did it, he did it. And eventually you get it right 'cause you've guessed everyone. I read The Defence by Steve Kavanagh, which was my first ever Steve Kavanagh book. I'm lying. I read a book called Kill for Me, Kill for You, but that's a standalone. That were class. If you've not read that, I highly recommend it. Really good book. But this was my first ever series Steve Kavanagh book. This is book 1 in the Eddie Flynn series. And I really enjoyed it. I can't remember what I scored it. I think it was 3.75. Review will be up here somewhere. You'll see it. And it was interesting because a lot of the crime books that I normally read are police procedurals where you follow in like FBI detective or police constable. You get what I'm saying? Where you're following a police officer trying to solve a crime. They use forensics and they catch the killer. But this is different because this follows a man who is like a paralegal or a lawyer and is morally grey. He doesn't always make the right decisions. He's not perfect, but he just feels real. The character development in this is pretty good. I think sometimes crime authors can forget to actually make the characters good and they rely solely just on the plots and the twists. Speaking of fantastic characters, this book, oi. We'll talk about that in a minute though. But yeah, really enjoyed this. It was something different. I've got The Plea, which is book 2 in this series, on my shelf somewhere. I'm looking forward to it. I can't say anything more than I enjoyed it. It did exactly what it was supposed to do, and I'm excited to go further into this series. This series, however, next level. Book 1 is The Puppet Show. I actually did a reread of The Puppet Show just before I read this. Oh, this man can do no wrong. It is a police procedural that follows a man called Washington Poe, who was, at the start of book 1, a retired detective. It's set in the UK in the Lake District. I can't think what they call him. Detective Sergeant. There you go. That's what they're called. And they basically wouldn't find him in Lake District and they're like, Poe, I know you've retired and we did you wrong, but will you come back? We need your help. And then he's like, oh, you've twisted my arm. So he comes back and they helps him solve crimes. But it's not just the crimes and the plot twists and things like that that steal this show. It's the character development between the 2 main characters. Washington Poe is a bit of a grumpy, middle-aged man. He doesn't always make the right choices. He's very morally grey. And he just doesn't like dealing with authority. We've all read them characters in these kind of books, but he's just the best. But then really early on in book 1, he meets a girl called Tilly Bradshaw, and she is... she's probably the best character I've read in any crime, thriller, mystery book ever. I just love her. She's my life. If I could have a female best friend in real life, it'd be her. She would be my female best friend. And I feel like my wife would allow it as well because I talk about her enough that my wife probably feels like she'd be her best friend too. It doesn't say she's autistic, but she is. She's very black and white. She's got no social boundaries. She just says what she thinks, and then Poe's kind of like, Tilly, you can't say that. And he's teaching her how to be a bit more socially appropriate because she's very socially awkward. But she just sees things that other people don't see, and without her, these crimes won't get solved. So book one, she's absolutely insane. Book two, I thought, built on book one, even better. It was absolutely fantastic. The twists were twisting. My only critique is that the first maybe quarter of this book, Tilly Bradshaw's not actually in it, and then Washington Poe gets to a bit where he's really struggling, and then he's like, Tilly, I need your help, and she's like, boy, better know I'm coming, and then she comes, and she just picks it all up again. It's just the best police procedural crime series I've read so far, and I know loads of you on my recent crime video that I did gave me loads of recommendations for other crime series, but I just can't seem to put this one down. I finished this one, and then after I picked this one up, then pick book three up straight away. And it's not like me. Usually I will finish a book and then I'll jump into a different series or a different genre just to give myself a bit of a breather. But I didn't with this one. I just picked this one straight back up and carried on reading because I didn't want to leave Washington Poe and Tilly Bradshaw alone for another minute, because I just feel like they can't solve these crimes without me. They need me as much as I need them. The other books I read this month that I don't have here with me were And Every Morning the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer and Longer and Longer and Longer, or something like that, by Frederick Backman. I don't have that because I borrowed it to my mum, because I've told my mum that she needs to read it because it's emotionally devastating. If you've not read that, it is fantastic. I want to say I rated that 5-star, 4.5-star. It was class anyway. It's just an unbelievable story of how dementia can affect the person suffering with the disease, but also how it can affect the family around. And it just hit home for me because my wife's nana, who I class as my own nan, is in a care home at the minute with dementia, and it's horrible to watch her. There's some lines in there that just hit home. It says something about how hard it is to watch someone leave you before they've left you, something like that, and it just made me cry. That book made me ugly cry 3 times. If you've ever witnessed anyone with dementia in your family, I don't even think you need to have witnessed it. I think everyone should read it, because at some point in your life you might witness someone with dementia, and it just maybe gives you little snippets of how you can help yourself, but how you can help them as well. And it just made me appreciate having a healthy family. I'll be honest, other than me, wife's nan, touch wood, at the minute at least, everyone around me is healthy. And it just made me so happy to look at them people and just enjoy good health. Again, being a good place to read this one though, because it is so upsetting. For me it were at least, but I think it's because it's so close to home at the minute. Another book that I read this month that I DNF'd was Fight Club by Chuck. No, I don't know what his surname is. I can't pronounce it. I'm not going to try and be clever. I didn't enjoy it. I rated it 2.5 star, but the reason I rated it 2.5 star still is because I could see what the book was trying to do. I could see some qualities in the book that other people might find. I don't know, it was a clever concept, but it just fell flat for me because I'm not a typical man. If we want to like stereotype what a typical man is, that just isn't me. This book is just very stereotypical white collar men. Go to work, come home miserable. They don't know how to cope with their emotions. They don't know how to find a release, so they turn to violence. Now, that's just not me. I turn to books. I turn to Disney films. I won't turn to smacking someone in the face. My dentist always told me, you need to look after your adult teeth, because once you've lost them, they've gone forever. So I don't want anyone smacking me in the teeth and losing a tooth. So yeah, I understand what author were trying to do. I understand why some people love it. I'm just not one of them people. I DNF'd it about halfway through. And then the last book that I didn't enjoy was Ender's Game by Scott Orson Card, I think his name was. I just couldn't vibe with the fact that the main character in that book was 6-year-old. And that's literally as logical as my DNF for that book got. I don't think there's anything wrong with the book. I think a lot of you would probably love that book. It's easy to read. The dialogue in it's quite good. There's some funny scenes in it. It's clever. It's sci-fi. There's not much not to like, other than the fact that I've got 3 kids and 2 of them have already been and passed 6 years old. And all the way through, I'm just like, look, 6-year-olds ain't going to do that. 6-year-olds are still a bit stupid. They're not saving planets. Yeah, I just couldn't see past it. But that's okay. I'm allowed to DNF books for stupid reasons like that because it's my own personal DNF. And how boring would reading be if every single person loved every single book? Or if we all loved and hated the same books? Reviews would be pointless because we'd be like, I'm not going to listen to Tyrone's review because I know we all hate that book and I know we all love that book. It's also a little bit misogynistic, but it is a product of its time. So if you're going to go into that book, I always say, when you go into a book like that, just be a bit more open-minded. Don't just go into it and be like, oh, he's a misogynist, he's sexist, because it is a product of its time. That book was written years ago. I don't even know when it was written, but let's have a look. 1985. Let's be right, most men were sexist back then. Culturally, in UK at least, it was normal for men to go to work and women stay at home. Men went to war, women stayed at home. And I think that's portrayed in this book, is that men went to war and tried to fight for society and the women just didn't. I think too many people get wrapped up in these books and try and compare what the book said then to how society is now. Although I will say someone did message me and tell me that the author of this book is a bit of a homophobe now. So, yeah, if you're against that, don't read his work. But if you've already got it on your shelf, you're not really supporting him, are you? I enjoyed this, so I hope you did too. So my plans for this page, going forward, is I'm probably going to do a reading wrap-up once a month, just so you know what I've read, and I can give you my reviews, just for if you do care about my actual thoughts and feelings on books. Every now and again, I'm going to chuck in just a random book video. And then I think I'm going to predominantly try and focus on doing these book tours. I did a recent video where I went round High Peak Bookstore, and I've looked across the internet and I can't see many people, or any people really, that are doing proper book tours of shops where they go in and they're talking to staff, they're talking to the owners, and they're doing a proper thorough tour of the bookshops. Most people are going around recording a bit of footage and doing a voiceover, but I want to go around and get into the nitty gritty of these bookstores, because if we don't use them, we lose them. And I'm a big advocate for trying to encourage people to go to their independent bookshops. Don't get me wrong, I love Waterstones as much as the next person. I find Amazon as convenient as the next person. I think one of the reasons a lot of us don't use the independent bookshops is because we just don't know they're there. So if I can travel the country, find all these hidden gems for you and put them on my page, then you can go and view them. So yeah, tell me what kind of content you want going forward. If you have watched till this point, I love you the most. And I truly mean that, because I am now monetized on YouTube. And the only way really I can make money on YouTube, there's two ways. One is by sticking ads in my videos, and I don't want to do that for you. I want to avoid putting ads in my videos, just to try and make the experience more fun for you so you can just watch the video. And two, if I get enough views, I get paid for it. But I've got to rely on you lot supporting me and watching my videos to the end, so it gets pushed out to more people, so that I don't have to put ads in my videos. I'll make you a promise, I'm never putting ads in my videos, because I hate ads. Anyway, I love you, bye.